Hi guys, what's up? My name is Karenina and welcome back to another video. Today I'm super excited because I'm going to be recommending books to Barbie. Yes, the Barbie from the movie. In specific, this Barbie right here, she won the Nobel Prize for Literature, and I mean, look at her. She's an icon, she's a legend, she is the moment. And so, of course, I'm going to do my tribute to her, even though she's not dead, but I'm going to do my tribute to her, and I'm going to be recommending some books that I think that Barbie would read. This list is basically all about what I think Barbie itself is. So, first of all, diversity. Barbie is about, I mean, of course, she still sets, unfortunately, as as the movie also addresses, Barbie did create standards and unimaginable and crazy and impossible standards, beauty standards, but at the same time, I got super happy. This week I was in the mall and I saw Barbie with black hair, and I was like, what? Because I had already seen like dark skinned Barbies or black Barbies, but all of them either had wavy hair or straight hair, and this was like one of the first time I saw actual curly hair, and I was like, what? This is so good. This is so beautiful. The movie brings out that aspect really well, I would say. Second of all, it's all about women empowerment. It's about feminism. It's about what women can do, and in a time that, you know, Barbie came out, women couldn't do anything. The first scene of the movie is talking about how all dolls prior to Barbie were like dolls in which little kids could play so they could be mothers, and then Barbie came and said like girls can be doctors, girls can be teachers, but they can also go to the moon. And like, Barbie is such an icon, honestly. So this is why I created that list. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and let's just get into it. The first book that I want to say is Anne of Green Gables by Ellen Montgomery. The reason why I put this here is actually because whenever I think about, like, Anne could totally be a Barbie, you know what I mean? Like, she's independent, she fights for, you know, women's rights, and she also defends our wrongs, and I stand her for it. Anne's story about, you know, finding herself and finding family and what family really is about, and figuring out how she fits into that society is super important, and it's a super valid story. And I just think that honestly inspired me a lot when I was a tween, when I was like 11, 12. Watching Anne of Green Gables and watching Anne with Annie and reading Anne of Green Gables just brought so much to me in terms of like thought and to take into consideration a lot of aspects about, you know, humanity and the way that we lead our lives, and about feminism. And it was like one of the first times I was actually introduced to, you know, feminist ideals. And so I think that Barbie would read us, you know what I mean? Then we have The Bangalore Detectives Club by Harini Nagendra. This is about Kaveri. I have no idea how to pronounce her name, I'm super sorry. Essentially, she moves to Bangalore and she's at a party and she's at this garden and she sees someone that is, you know, highly suspicious, kind of, and later on this party just becomes, it goes terribly wrong. You know, everybody dies, it's like, it becomes a funeral. And then she decides to investigate this. Again, I just think Barbie would enjoy this. Honestly, I think that it's her cup of tea. I could be wrong, I could be right. You know, there's also this, I think, historical fiction that's set in 1920s. And we have a woman investigating a murder in which there is also a woman that is being connected to it, and I think she's gonna be blamed or something. And it's just all super intriguing, and I think that Barbie would absolutely eat this up. The next one is Miscalculation, a love story of epic miscalculation by, oh my god, Camon Felix. So it's about this person that she goes through, you know, a mental breakdown because she breaks up with her partner, And everything starts to go down, and she just starts reflecting about her dyscalculia, which, if you don't know, it's a disorder. It's kind of like dyslexia. It's, if that makes it difficult for you to, read and reading skills, I guess. Dyscalculia makes it harder for you to learn math, and it's about her going through this path and discovery. And again, it's all about diversity. I really wanted to read this book. I've been waiting for a very long time, but I really want to read it because it just sounds like my cup of tea. It just sounds super interesting, and I haven't seen a lot of books portray dyscalculia. It's already very hard for books to portray characters with dyslexia, and then when you put dyscalculia on, there are a lot of people who don't even know that exists. And I just think that it's going to be such an interesting book, and it has a 3.93 average rating on Goodreads, which I would say is a pretty high one. So then we have Inca, Where's Your Husband by Lizzie Damilola Blackburn. This is about Inca, who is a young woman, and everybody wants her to find someone, essentially. Her aunties, they want her to find a husband. Her family is like, aren't you gonna get married? Aren't you gonna get married? Her friends are like, oh, you're too conventional. You shouldn't. Why marry? Just have a fling. Just have a fling, And she's just trying to find love, actual love, someone that she actually feels attracted to and is not pushed down her throat. It's all about that journey and about her finding love and also finding herself. And I think this is going to be such an important self-discovery story. And just to think about this reading, it makes me super excited. It's one of those books that I don't know how many people have talked about this book before, but I haven't seen a lot of people talking about it on the internet. It doesn't ship to Brazil, essentially. I mean, it does, but it's like $200. So, but I am definitely excited to read this. Then we have School for Good Mothers by Jessamine Chan. It's about her journey just trying to keep her child and the custody of her child, because they kept an eye on her, and she's also having trouble with her husband and with her relationship at home. It just sounds so interesting. It just sounds like it's going to reflect on so many aspects on how the world sees mothers and the way that they take care of us, and how, a lot of men can do whatever the fuck they want with their children, but a mother cannot have a single misstep, and then the government will be after them. Then we have Brown Girls by Daphne Palasi Andreades. This is about four women of color. They're living in New York, and it's all about their lives and the way they interact with, their community and with their culture and within each other, and, a lot of marginalization. How do you pronounce this word? Marginalization, I think that's the word, in the US, because it's the US, and we all know that it does not treat people of color very well. But I think, again, it's all about culture, it's all about embracing yourself, and I'm just super excited. This book is in my 23 books to read in 2023, which I'm not even close to finishing this list, but I'm definitely very excited to read this book, and a lot of Barbies would as well, let me tell you that. Okay, then we have Wonderful Adventures of Mrs. Sequel in Many Lands. This is about Mrs. Sequel. She's a Jamaican woman in 18 something, and it's all about her traveling from continent to another and working as a nurse and as an innkeeper, and I think she becomes a doctor, and she works on various wars. And I remember Emma read this book, and I just remember the way that she talked about this book was so, it just made it's completely sold the book for me. And then when I searched more about it, it just seems so interesting. I'm super excited to read this. I'm pretty sure this is autobiographical as well. I'm gonna quote Goodreads on this one because they can probably word this better than I can. Frequently we see her joyfully rise to mock the limitations artificially imposed on her as a Black woman. She emerges from her writings as an individual with the most un-Victorian zest for travel, adventure, and independence. I'm glad my mom died. I just think that it would be so interesting. This book blew up last year. I still haven't read it because I was not in my space to read that when it came out. I'm still like kind of testing the ground to see if I am. So this is why I haven't picked this up yet. But I think I can absolutely imagine like the Barbies making a book club and reading this book and just like absolutely eating it up. I think Reese Witherspoon, who played Elle Woods in Legally Blonde, I think that this book was on her book club, which in fact I would love to join. I don't know if I can join, but like I love Reese. I think that this book just brings so many interesting and raw and important topics to be discussed, and we need to look into that as a society. And it's interesting because you see a lot of child actors speaking up about their experience and their trauma from being child actors, but the way that this book is written, like everybody just says that it's just like so well written, and it's just so heart-wrenching to see Jeanette McCarthy going through these things at such a young age. And I can absolutely see like the way that a lot of other groups of women and just groups of people, you know, sat and read this book and thought about it and reflected a lot on in the movie industry. And I think it's just such an important book, and Barbie would absolutely eat this up. The next one we have is Pachinko by Min Jun Lee. I read this book, I'm gonna be entirely honest, I was not such a big fan of it. In my mind, it kind of just slipped like halfway through. But this is an intergenerational narrative. We have this girl, and she lives in this like island, this small town, I guess, and she kind of like falls for this rich man that comes there. I don't remember his name. She gets her pregnant, doesn't, you know, assume the child, and there is this, I think he's a pastor, and he decides that he's going to marry her so she doesn't have to face the judgment of society. So she leaves her hometown, and I think her home country, and I think, I might be completely wrong, but I think that she goes to Japan with her new husband, and they just start living their life there. So she, you know, she has a child with him. It's about her children growing up there and her finding a job, and all about them growing up and, you know, them going through their own struggles, what kind of like links you to your own culture, and a lot about, you know, colonization. And I think this book was very interesting. Again, the last half kind of lost me, but I still think it's a book that is worthy to read, and I really enjoyed it. Like overall, I think I would absolutely recommend this, and in fact I am. I'm recommending the book. The next two are retellings of original mythological tales. We have Cersei and Ariadne. I have not enjoyed either of those, as you know. I think I mentioned that. I read Cersei last year, and then this year I read Ariadne. They were my favorites because of the pacing, and the writing style wasn't really my thing. But still, these are modern feminist retellings of the stories of Cersei and Ariadne. Ariadne, she is the girl who saved the love of her life from the Minotaur. You know, she lent him the string thing, and then he escaped the Minotaur, killed him, escaped the labyrinth, all of that. She faced the consequences, he didn't. Great story. Yeah. And then we have Cersei, who is, I think she's a minor goddess, and she's kind of expelled from, I don't know if it's the Olympus, but it's somewhere there. She kind of lived with the gods again, so she's exiled to this island, and it's present in loads of stories, and a lot of heroes go to the Isle of Cersei, and it's honestly all about them living their lives and the struggles that they go through, because, you know, both myths did them really wrong. It's all about them kind of re-owning their own stories. The next one is Lady Tan's Circle of Women by Lisa C. This is about a Chinese girl called, I'm gonna try to pronounce this, Yunshan. She essentially works as an apprentice of a doctor with her grandma, I think, and it's about her, you know, treating women and helping out women in her circle, in her social circle. But then she gets engaged. A ring is put on her finger, and her family her, you know, in-laws decide that she cannot no longer help this woman because then she's not a woman of good, you know? And it's all about her kind of like defying the system and defying disbeliefs. I feel like I'm so bad at like describing what books are about without spoiling anything. Again, a book I have not read, but it's in my list. I think it was very recently published, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, it came out like in June, in the beginning of June this year. And I'm definitely super excited to read this book. Like, it just sounds so interesting. And also is set in the 15th century. Which I don't think I've read like a lot of historical fiction from China. Anna Karenina by Tolstoy. Who knew a man could bribe women? So Anna Karenina, if you didn't know, is this classic, my favorite book, by the way, about Anna Karenina. She falls in love out of wedlock. She has a child, she's married, but she's not really been in love with her husband, you know what I mean? And she falls for Count Vronsky, which is this single young man, very popular, an eligible bachelor in Russian society in the 18th something. And it's all about their romance. It's all about her defying the expectations from society, and it's also all about her downfall. Anna starts facing a lot of issues with, you know, mental illness, and with feeling excluded from society. She starts like suspecting other people and thinking like, oh, they hate me, and thinking like, oh, I hate them. And then she goes through this very high highs and low lows, and there's a lot of discussion on, you know, Anna's mental health condition, and it's a very well written book. Like, yes, it's 800 pages, yes, it drags for a very long time, but it's very well written, and I really love it, especially for the time that it was written. Like, this book's from like 1850s or something, I guess, and like, it does a pretty decent job at explaining all of those things happening in Anna's life, and it's just very interesting, and I really enjoyed it. Okay, now we come to two classics by my favorite author, Jane Austen, the queen herself. So we have Pride and Prejudice and Mansfield Park. I think that these two books are books that I really like to recommend to people, like when it comes to Jane Austen, even though Persuasion is my favorite one. And the reason to that is because people don't realize how strong, like, they always compare Fanny and Lizzie, and they're always like, oh, Fanny is so weak and Lizzie is such a strong character. And I think it's all about realizing how they're all both strong in their own ways. It's just the way that their support system is very different. So in Pride and Prejudice, we have Lizzie, who is a very independent woman. She's very ahead of her time when it comes to, you know, her thoughts and her mindset. And she wants to marry for love, which, you know, not something that a lot of people did 200 years ago. So we have Lizzie. She wants to marry for love. She goes against a lot of expectations from society and from her family, you know, but she does have a father who supports her and who supports her decisions. And Fanny Price does not have that. I know a lot of people don't like Mansfield Park, especially because of the amount of walks they take, but in Fanny Price's defense, people in Pride and Prejudice just go to each other's houses to have dinner. So, like, what can you say? It's all about Fanny Price, and she was adopted by her aunt and uncle because her family had like 10 kids. She was the eldest daughter. They did not have money to take care of all these kids, so they were like, okay, your aunt, she has more money than us, she's married to this very wealthy man, just go live with them. And she goes to live with them when she's like 10. I don't remember if she was like 10 or 6, but she's very young. She's a very young kid. And it's all about their expectations on her. She's kind of like an accessory to them. They don't really care about her. They don't really like her. The only person who treats her more decently is like Edmund, and he still treats her so badly. And he's also her love interest. Yes, they're cousins. A lot of people say that she's very, you know, weak because she doesn't stand up for herself, and, you know, she lets her family quite literally step on her in a very bad way. Like, they treat her so badly, and a lot of people hate Fanny for that because she doesn't speak up. But at the same time, she did not have a support system like Lizzie. She had a family who hated her, who did not want her there, who thought that she was way less than them. How could she even speak up? You know what I mean? Like, she did not have any support system at all. Everybody hated her. And she didn't even have friends until, like, Mary and her brother came into place. And they were really bad. Like, Mary told her, man, you know, you don't do that to your friend. And so, yeah, everything goes down until Fanny is being courted by this guy that comes into town, and everybody's obsessed with them because it's brother and sister, and you know, everybody wants to marry the sister, everybody wants to marry the brother, and he starts courting her, and he's like, I want to marry her, and this is the first time that her family kind of starts paying attention to her, and she rejects him. And he's a very wealthy man, so obviously they want him to marry her. Actually, they want her to marry him. They don't want him to marry her. But he's like falling for her or whatever, and she senses that he has a very bad character, so she keeps refusing to marry him over and over again to her family because she knows that he's such a bad person, and they keep pushing her and over. Like, her uncle does her the favor to sending her back to her family because he's like, I'm gonna show her what's being poor like, and then she's gonna want to be rich, and then she's gonna want to marry him. It does not work. So there's a lot of stuff until the end of the book. I'm not gonna spoil it, obviously. This book is like 400 pages, so don't worry, I'm not spoiling anything. But it's all about her standing up for herself, and I think that Fanny is so strong for this. I remember feeling so happy for her for like facing her abusive family and being like, no, I'm not gonna marry him because he's a dick, and he has a terrible character, and he's manipulative, and he's not a good person, and I'm not gonna marry him, even though her family hated her for it and kept blaming her. Fanny Price is a freaking icon, and you're not ready for this conversation. I cannot talk about Barbie, I cannot talk about women and women empowerment and anything without talking about Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. What is this book? I remember really enjoying it. I read this in 2019. No, it wasn't 2020. It was right when the movie came out. It reached Brazil in like Christmas. So obviously I did not want to watch it. I watched it in January, and I remember it was so nice. And I remember reading the book and feeling it was so freaking good. I remember enjoying every single moment of the book and just feeling like it was, like, I swear to God, I really liked Little Women. I think I really want to reread it because I don't remember a lot from the plot. Like, I remember nothing from the plot. Like, small details. But I just remember really enjoying the way that the characters are built. So we have these four sisters, the March sisters, in the middle of American Civil War. So we have Jo, who is the writer, more independent, ahead of her time mindset sister. We have Beth, who is the musician. She's more quiet, but she also holds her strength in that. She's so cute. We have Amy, who is the artist, you know, visual arts type of thing. And oh my God, there's this scene, I don't think it's in a book, obviously, but there's this scene in the movies that Florence Pugh just nails it. Like, it's super, like, her acting in that scene, I really love it. And it's just a talk between her and Laurie, who is the love interest for at least 3 sisters and a family friend, and talking about how marriage is an economic affair. And it's such a powerful scene. It's so well written, and I really liked. I was not a big fan of Amy when I watched it, but I think she has grown on me quite recently. And then lastly, we have the boring sister. What's her name? Oh my God, what's her name? It's Emma Watson. I don't remember the sister's name to see how relevant she is. Not because she wants to follow expectations. Like, the dream of her life is basically marrying and having kids, which, like, nothing wrong with that. But I just thought she was such a boring character. I thought we didn't even see a lot of her for me to really be that attached to her. Like, I just remember Jo was the girl for me. Joel and Beth, like, they had my hearts when I read this at age 14. I remember when I first read it, I didn't even enjoy her writing style instead when compared to Jane Austen's, because Jane Austen, she's all about going on walks, going to dinners, going to parties, which like obviously is what people are interested back then. But I'm not interested, you know? Nowadays I can do way more than just sit around and go to dinners. You know what I mean? But Louisa May Alcott, it feels like the book never stops. Like there's always something happening, and it was so good. Another one for the Barbie book club. Then we have Black Candle Women by Diane Mary Brown. I'm just so excited to read this book. You have no idea. First of all, look at this cover. Do you see what I see? Because I see it, I definitely see it, and I love it. This is about 4 generations of Black women, the Montrose women, and it's about this family curse in which any boy that Monroe's girl falls for is gonna die. And one of them just brings the boy home, and it's all about this curse, and I think it's as in 1950s. And it just seems so good, like very whimsical, very fantasy-like, but at the same time literary. Like it just feels like a combination of literary fiction about intergenerational relationships, which is something I love. Like, you cannot go wrong when it comes to those. With a fantasy element. It just feels like the best book I'm going to read, and if it's not, I'm gonna give up. We're also at A Feminist Guide to Taking Back the English Language by Amanda Montwell. So this is essentially about deconstructing language, or navigating through English and the words that are used to refer to women. And where do they come from? You know, cultural references, historical references, how they're used nowadays, why some of these terms are still being used, and it's all obviously about feminism and about the way that we are seen, the way we are portrayed, and the way that we are talked about. This just sounds so interesting. She also, actually I don't know the pronouns. They also wrote Cultish, which is that book that talks about, you know, cults and the language that used in those to manipulate people. And I saw a lot of people saying that, and I actually just found out about this book because I wanted to read Cultish. I think Jack Edwards recommended it, but I saw a lot of people saying that it wasn't her best work, that it was worse lot. And when I saw this, I was like, please, as someone who's going to study literature and linguistics, hopefully, in university, this just sounds like it's made to me, honestly. I'm just super excited to read this book, and like, it just sounds so good, honestly. Portable 19th century African American women writers. This is a compilation of like poetry and essays and texts on the experiences of women, the experiences of African American women, and of being marginalized. And it just sounds so good. This collection comprises work from 49 writers arranged into sections of memoir, poetry, and essays on feminism, education, and the legacy of Black women writers. Many of these pieces engage with social movements like abolition, women's suffrage, temperance, and civil rights, but a thematic center is Black women's intellect and personal ambition. The diverse section includes well-known writers like Sojourner Truth, Hannah Crafts, and Harriet Jacobs, as well as lesser-known writers like Ella Shepherd, who offers a first-hand account of life in a world-famous singing group. Taken together, these incredible works insist that the writing of Black women writers be read, remembered, and addressed. Perfection, amazing. It's crazy because whenever we think about classics, we always think about the same like 5 authors, and 5 out of 5 of them are white men. Especially if they're European. If they're American, it's gonna be like Hemingway, John Steinbeck. I don't know. Who's American? Who's written books? I don't know. Ray Bradbury, Edgar Allan Poe. That's it. Oh, and F. Scott Fitzgerald. There's that. And we never mention, you know, women. And like, honestly, this just sounds so interesting. I think that reading this book, like, why is it that these books are not portrayed in schools? Like, why are kids not reading this? Obviously I know why. I'm not dumb. I live in a third world country. There's a lot you can learn from living here. But like, I don't know, it just feels like so interesting. Like, can you imagine reading text from Sojourner Truth? My life is complete. I'm gonna read this right now. Last but not least, we have A Room of One's Own by Virginia Woolf. I have never read this, like most of the books on this list, but this, I heard, is about, it's a feminist essay. I have already read a couple of Virginia Woolf's essays last year in a short collection, but for some reason this wasn't there. And it's essentially about what are the conditions of a woman to, you know, live in and thriving in society. And she presents the idea that women should have their own room to, you know, write and think their thoughts and, you know, be creative and live their lives, and to be able to have their own space for them. And it's like a revolutionary essay from, I don't know, 1920s or whenever Virginia Woolf was writing. Like, everybody reads this. I'm pretty sure this is a required read for like a lot of literature courses, and it's also very well known. So of course I have not read it. Again, for some reason, whenever it comes to, you know, English teachers assigning us books to read in class, it's always like, I don't know, A Tale of Two Cities, A Christmas Carol, Hemingway, John Steinbeck, whatever men they want us to read. And it's almost never about like women writing, and especially a feminist essay, which like a part of me kind of gets, because I just know that there will be a lot of parents complaining, because obviously a teacher cannot assign a read that will, you know, incentivize critical thinking. And so yeah, I think that this is an essay that I would absolutely adore to have read when I was younger. But I mean, I still can't read it. I don't know why I'm talking like I'm like 50 years old. I'm only 17, and it's definitely something I want to read. I don't know if I'll be able to read it this year, because when I look at the pile of books that I want to read this year, it's kind of concerning, because I realized that I kind of have like 300 books that I want to read this year, and that's absolutely not gonna work. But yes, I am definitely excited to read this. And that was it. I hope you, Barbie, had a great time watching this. And yeah, if this video gets to you, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed this list of books, and that they inspire you somehow. And if you read one of those, or if you read a couple of those, or is there a book that you're particularly interested in, please tell me. I've spent 15 minutes filming this book because I have not counted, but there is a lot of books here. I'm gonna 21. Okay, so we have 21 books. Just celebrate, because Barbie was launched on the 21st. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, make sure you give thumbs up, subscribe down below, and I will see you in my next video. Bye bye.